The nature of the forum, just to give you a bit of background, is it's basically a place where we can discuss a topic, and we can look at practices within that topic, and we can look at what we can take out in terms of lead practice and what we can take home in terms of adapting practices in our own environment there. Our assertion is that there's a lot of good work and there's a lot of ineffective work in CSI. And through this forum and through the Knowledge Hub, which this forum feeds into, where we document these case studies, we look at trying to bring practice to the fore, encourage sharing, encourage collaboration around what's working and what's not working. In the space of CSI, people often talk about what's working. What we really like to understand is what the challenges are, what are the considerations are, what's the deeper issues around a program that you need to think about when you're investing your funds in particular programs. And so if we can bring some of that to the fore and help the sector as a whole share those lessons, then I think we've done our job. A little bit just on who we are as Trialogue. For those of you who don't know, we run advisory services as well, but in the product space, we run forum discussions, we put on a conference, we have a publication. There are copies of that publication. We've been doing this CSI handbook, now Business and Society handbook, for over 20 years, and we use that to track research and trends in the CSI space. So where companies are giving, into what areas, company case studies are profiled in that publication. And then we have what I spoke to you about now is the Knowledge Hub, which is basically a digital portal for putting up case studies, sharing lessons, and that's an open platform. And we really do look for any examples, any credible case studies we'll put up there. Any practices we'll put up on the Knowledge Hub. We'll vet the content, but if there's good content, we'd like to see it up there so others can actually learn and share off that. Today, so just a brief introduction from me on the topic. I'm not going to try and dissect it in any kind of depth at all, but just to talk about the concept of maths and science, and then to hand across to Nicholas, who will talk to you about their maths and science program, give you a little bit of a perspective of their approach towards maths and science, and then the bulk of the session will be spent on really talking. It will be a discussion, we'll raise some questions, and have an interactive discussion around some of those questions. Firstly, if you look at the spend, government spend in the region of 230 billion rand on education. They spend more than that. It's more like 360 billion, but just on basic education. That's the sort of order of magnitude. We estimate that companies spend 9.7 billion through their CSI programs. That includes non-cash giving, it includes giving by state-owned entities, and about half of that giving goes through non-profits. And a portion of that, education is the most popular area supported. So if you just cut the numbers and dissect them, it would imply about 4.3 billion into education. 30% of companies in education support maths and science. About a quarter of that money will go into tertiary programs, bursaries, and the like of that as well. So the reality is it's actually quite a small share. It's probably about 1 to 1.5% of what government's spending. And the takeout is, what did we do as companies to make a difference, to shift the dial? Because if all we're doing is really replacing or displacing what government is doing anyway, we're not going to actually see any kind of sea change. We're not going to actually shift the space around maths and science. So what can companies do to actually really improve things? And that's part of the discussion today around what you do. Do you make an impact? Do you quantify that impact that you're making? And can you extend that impact to actually have a broader reach? The challenges, without harping on them, are I think known to most people, but some quite scary stats coming out. I mean, we really value mathematics, and yet we rank really low, 60 over just more than 60 companies through a SIMS report, second worst in maths, worst in science. 61% of South African grade 5 learners could not do basic mathematics. Nearly 80% of maths teachers could not score 60% or higher on grade 6 or 7 results. So it's a problem that perpetuates, unfortunately. So with poor teaching and learners not getting exposed to maths and science, it's difficult to make any kind of real inroads into that space. Challenges, poorly trained teachers. There's that same stat again. We were having a conversation around this in the office, and the reality is that people are teachers are teaching maths and science, but they're not maths and science teachers necessarily. So a lot of those stats in terms of their ability, to teach and their knowledge of the subject, is compromised by the fact that they weren't really taking maths and science. We've got a shortage of teachers in that space in the first place. It's not necessarily a reflection just on the teachers, but on the teachers, what the teachers have been asked to do. There's lack of resources. There's the issue around reading. So you go into grade 4 where you're required to really learn to apply the lessons, but you don't understand the language adequately to be able to apply the lessons. And now you're being taught a foreign or a very different set of skills through maths in a language that you might not be familiar with. So the challenges are deep and vast. We're always quite interested in what the kinds of interventions look like. And with each of these interventions, and what I'd like to do in the discussion is sort of tease this open a little bit and say what other interventions are there out there, what kind of style of intervention. So there's a program, for instance, where an example would be the PSP, Primary Science Program, where they look at upgrading teacher skills in classrooms with close work with the Department of Education. They get in there, provide classroom support, teaching materials, etc. So that's one approach, working in the system, in the education system, to try and really improve and lock in the benefits of better teaching in a set of schools, in an ecosystem of schools in a particular area. So that's one approach. The approach, another approach, which is fairly common, is to select students and provide extra tuition to them. And I think Nicholas will talk more about that program. Now, you're obviously not getting in at grassroots there, but you are picking children that have some aptitude towards maths and science, and 3 years of intense supplementary education can often push them over the provide sufficient input to be able to get the grades up to a point where they can go on to do bachelor degrees and the like. So that's a different approach. So more of a displacement model as opposed to working within the system. You've got a specialist school approach, so a lot of you might be familiar with elite maths and science schools, where effectively you're setting up a school, a dedicated school with a focus on maths and science. And what's quite interesting is that within that school they focus a lot of attention on things like life orientation, given some of the trauma that the children's experience in their home environment. So they settle the children, then they teach them, and they also link in with advantage schools as well as with other schools in the area in which they operate, so they can try and extend the benefits. I'm not sure the extent to which those benefits are extended out into other schools, into other areas, but it's an expensive model, but it is, I think, an effective model in terms of those that are in the system. There are ICT initiatives. There's a lot of hope around content and ICT and the role that it could play. I'm not by any stretch an expert in the space, but I do know it's often more complicated than people believe it to be. So you can't just drop a device into a school and expect people to then pick it up. There's issues around adoption, access, teaching materials, integration with the curriculum, the teachers being familiar and aware and able to actually pass on the benefits of the ICT programs. But that's again a different angle that someone might take in terms of tackling this issue. And there are a range of other types of interventions, more niche type interventions. An example we put up there was a sort of chess type program, but there would be others as well that one could look at to try and bring in aptitude towards thinking, maths and science orientated thinking, etc. So there are options, and all of those options got pros and cons, and maybe we'll discuss some of those pros and cons and look at any other approaches out there.